Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to helping the investment banking community grow through learning from successful leaders. So whether you're interested in learning about investment banking, or you're an analyst or associate looking for advice on career progression and succeeding in the industry, or a VP or senior that's passionate about leadership, you'll take away something from each and every episode. My name is Pete Nieberg, Global Head at Altrum, and my mission is to connect as many of you with successful investment banking leaders as possible. So thanks for joining me and enjoy today's episode. So I'm super excited to introduce today's guest, Gokhan Ozkan, the Managing Director at JP Morgan here in London. Gokhan has over 17 years experience in the investment banking industry with a deep understanding of FIG and credit management. He spent most of his career at JP Morgan, starting off as an analyst and growing through the ranks to reach the MD role within 15 years. Currently, he's the head of FIG in Turkey, Middle East and Africa. Gokhan has advised on many successful transactions across his career, including landmark transactions such as UMB's three-way merger with ADCB and Al Hilal, which was a $17 billion deal, and more recently, National Commercial Bank on its merger with Samba Financial Group, which was a $46 billion deal, the largest FIG M&A deal for more than a decade. So Gokhan certainly understands a thing or two about success. Outside of that, he's an all-round great guy, and he's really passionate about sharing his knowledge and helping others in the industry to grow. So it was a no-brainer for today's episode. So welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, Gokhan. Thanks for joining me and the audience today.
Thank you, Pete. I think the 17 years of experience surely makes me look quite old, but hopefully I have still like a few things to give on the job.
Still a long way to go. And for those with a video, you're looking good today. So, hey, let's start just with I know most of our listeners will be very familiar with JP Morgan, but just start with a quick introduction to JP Morgan and what you do for your clients.
Sure. So I think, JP Morgan, of course, I think it will be familiar to all the audience. We are a bank involved in almost all parts of the financial services. So you could describe it as a financial supermarket, let's say. And we have a market cap of around $400 billion with net income of almost $40 billion per year, present with the Chase brand in the US on the conventional banking side. And JP Morgan brand is obviously for the investment banking side. We have 300,000 employees across the world and present in, we are doing business in more than 100 countries, and we have offices again around more than like 60 countries as well. So we are clearly a global firm, and obviously our CEO Jamie Dimon is quite well known. He was actually recently in London for our CEO conference, and we would like to keep this global connectivity across the continents, such as Middle East, as you just described on some deals, and Latin America, Asia, US, Europe. So clearly a quite well-established firm. And it's really important for us to recruit young talent. And I think with this podcast, hopefully, we can give a further background for younger audience.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the intro, Gokhan. And certainly the listeners today, I'm sure will be intrigued and want to know how they can be part of it. So I'm always interested speaking to successful leaders with 15 years, 16 years plus in the industry about their journey. I know you started as a logistics engineer at Procter & Gamble before moving into investment banking. So why don't you tell us how you ended up in the industry?
Yeah. So I think of course, it has been a long time. But when I started, I was, of course, quite young, just finishing out of the university. I studied industrial engineering in Turkey. And the most relevant job for me was to be logistics engineer. Procter & Gamble came to our campus, and they are actually great at marketing. And it was a really strong brand name. And it was sort of the dream of myself as well to work there. But once I started working there, it didn't feel so right for me in the sense that, yes, it was a great job. There is nothing bad about being a logistics engineer, and I studied industrial engineering, but I didn't really feel quite content with what I was doing. I didn't feel happy. When you wake up, I think you really need to be motivated to go to work. So just after 6 months, I actually started looking for other opportunities. And I think investment banking was fascinating for me. Not that I knew anything about investment banking. My father is a doctor, my mother is a teacher. We don't have any bankers or investment bankers in the family. It wasn't well known in Turkey as well because it's an emerging market. It wasn't really well developed. But I was watching some movies, I was reading certain books, I was actually talking to other people. Internet was not as developed at the time, but still you had lots of resources. And from some of the movies I watched, like Wall Street, Michael Douglas, there was Barbarians at the Gate regarding RJR Nabisco's leverage buyout. I really felt fascinated, and I was always a maths fan. I was into the financials, stocks, markets. So that actually really made me interested. And I applied. I heard that JP Morgan was hiring in Turkey with a position in London, and it was a bit of a coincidence actually. But I was extremely motivated. I didn't know anything about investment banking, yeah, but that was one of the triggers for me to. I think I would say the movies and the books had a profound impact on me.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. And as I say, everyone's journey is unique, and yours is certainly unique. And from that industrial engineering background, do you feel that that's helped you in any way in the investment banking role?
So I think, yeah, engineering is obviously quite technical. It could be boring at times, but given that it's technical, you are actually quite accustomed to working with numbers and analyzing, solving problems, which actually resonates well on the investment banking front. So on the technical part of the job, I never had any issues because it's all about maths, it's all about deep dive analysis. But of course, investment banking is not only about numbers, it's also about people. So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot just really quite like introverted and focusing only on like your work or your numbers. It's a relationship business as well. But if you can combine both the technical part and also the human element, then you could really make a difference. I think for me, one struggle was I never had proper economics training. We had certain macroeconomics, microeconomics courses for industrial engineers. However,
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn everything from the beginning, right, from scratch. So what I did is, in order to prepare for the interviews, I actually bought some books like Fundamentals of Corporate Finance. You had like Modern Corporate Finance Theory, and I started reading, and it was actually quite entertaining for me, like the dividends, how you raise funds for the companies, and there was actually also the end goal was to help the economies. So it wasn't really not only for yourself, but you were effectively working for the economy, creating wealth with productivity, and that was actually quite touching for me as well. So I thought I found actually a deeper meaning working on those topics.
Nice. And I like the way you touched on people. From the leaders I've had on the podcast recently, it's come up a lot that, investment banking is a lot about people and
Yeah.
the relationships you have. So it's not surprised to hear that, and taking it on your own back to go and learn and read. And maybe I'll grab some of those books to pop into the show notes for our listeners as well. But before we get into the real meat of the discussion today, just tell myself, the listeners, one thing that we can't find anywhere about you, something unknown or unexpected.
Yeah, so I think bankers, we are not so exciting people in general. So, like, I think people see us more as, of course, business oriented, numbers oriented, finance oriented people. But I think when you get to know certain investment bankers or like other bankers across the world, also especially in London circles, you would be fascinated. Everybody has actually different hobbies. And for me as well, I have a wide set of hobbies. Of course, sports play an important part because you really need to like team sports in order to enjoy your job. So for me, of course, football, basketball, tennis are quite critical. I'm a big fan of Galatasaray in Turkey, which is my football club. In
Okay.
England, I support Liverpool. I'm actually I was hoping for the Istanbul Champions League final, which will be on June 10th, because in 2005, I have a great memory. I was at the university and I traveled all the way from Ankara, my hometown, to Istanbul to watch Liverpool-Milan Champions League game. And it was such an amazing game. Like Liverpool won from 3-0 down and against a very strong Milan team.
Not a bad game to
Exactly.
watch. I remember it well.
I think it was like one of the best, probably the best Champions League final. So that was a good one. So with tennis also, I'm extremely interested. And actually, very interesting anecdote. When I was like around 11, 12 years old, I was watching Roland Garros at Eurosport, and there were some like advertisements at the time for like I work for JP Morgan advertisement. You can find it at YouTube. This is a very old one, but it was way for JP Morgan to attract talent. And it actually, I remember that for many years, because like when you are so young and then when you see a company's advertisement, it was actually quite interesting. But I think other thing to note is on the basketball side, when I was at university, I was a writer for NBA teams because I was watching NBA games. I was really obsessed about it. For Dallas Mavericks, they had Dirk Nowitzki as one of the best players. And since then, I'm fascinated with the NBA system because you actually, even the worst teams can become quite good with a process. So you actually develop players. And with Golden State Warriors, I was actually quite fascinated because given that they traded Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and just from straight out of university, and they built sort of a dynasty with 4 championships. So I still follow. I think even last night, I think the Lakers Golden State Warriors game was quite fascinating for me. And apart from that, yeah, chess, some other games like books or literature, these are all my passions. But obviously you don't have much time. But still, I'll try to find time at during weekends, especially to enjoy this, like my colleagues.
Nice. I'm a big sports fan. I'm not that into NBA, I've got to admit, but a big Arsenal fan, and we're having a good season. So hopefully the next few weeks will be good ones for us.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And it's good to get a better understanding of you.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about deal success. You know, successful deals is a key component, of course, to investment banking. And we mentioned the biggest FIG M&A deal for more than a decade. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that deal, and in particular, what led to success within that deal. I think the audience would really love that.
But that was actually quite an interesting one you mentioned on your intro. National Commercial Bank merged with Samba Financial Group. This created a bank with more than $200 billion of assets and around $50 billion market cap. And post-integration, the market cap reached to almost $90 billion. And the assets are around $250 billion right now. So it was quite a successful one. They changed the name to Saudi National Bank. I think what was interesting is actually it is the largest bank in Saudi Arabia. So they created a national champion, and it's sponsored by the government as well. And the Middle East, Saudi Arabia are actually quite like interesting names nowadays. If you look at the real GDP growth, 2022, Saudi Arabia with almost 9% real GDP growth. It was the fastest growing country among the largest economies, and there is a strong government push. And there is actually a bigger agenda to become a global champion. But for investment banking front, I think for client side, there was a clear strategic rationale. But for investment banking side, this was the first deal we executed during the COVID times, like pandemic era. And actually, we executed such a large deal mainly via video conferences because all the travels were blocked. And it was done from a very small circle with the key decision makers on each side. And on our side, we, of course, traveled once the traveling was allowed when the flights were operating. But it showed that you could actually execute these deals with a very small circle of group if you have confidential sort of communication mediums such as video conferences, right? And it was actually quite an interesting one, and in a very short timetable with very detailed analysis. And our client at the end was extremely happy and it was a quite highly regarded deal also in the international press. So that's why we are proud of it, and I think it also shows that the deal making processes will be a bit different in the current environment, because previously our clients, they never used video conferences, they never used like certain mediums, but now especially during COVID, they had to learn how to use how to utilize these video conferences, and I think it made a very interesting impact. Still, for many confidential discussions like board meetings, in-person meetings are much better, and we encourage that. However, there are actually quite a bit of alternative ways in order to execute deals in the current environment.
Good, perfect. Yeah, and I think I've heard this a lot about the remote environment, and of course, deals being done more frequently and being able to be done comfortably for banks and for their clients. Again, looking at like what makes a successful deal, are there some key ingredients for you that that lead you to that successful conclusion?
Sure. So I think you really, I mean, we work on either side, so either sell side or buy side, or in a merger of equals. Again, like we work for one party, and we always aim to become the trusted advisor. So we need to be really authentic with our advice, because it's a long-term business as well, and we would like to create value on behalf of our shareholders. I think one key aspect is you really need to understand your clients, what their objectives are, and what their goals are as well. This understanding is extremely critical. And during the projects, you have lots of roadblocks. So these type of big mergers, there are many issues as well, like such as negotiations are always extremely tough, because when you discuss the value, the price, you need to be really quite detailed, and you need to provide your clients with ammunition when they discuss with other principals, or when you discuss with other investment bankers. You really need to be factual. You cannot just get the best results with half-baked ideas. And also, whenever there are issues, you need to anticipate those issues, and you need to be upfront to the client. So it's never a good idea, of course, to hide certain bad news. So you need to be upfront, and the timing is important. So whenever you are aware of certain issues, or certain, like even good news, or like bad news, you need to inform your clients, you need to give them advice, and with consensus, then you can go ahead. So I think these are quite important. And last but not the least, the team cohesion is really important at JP Morgan as well, because we generally have large teams in the for projects, from analysts, associates, VPs, EDs, MDs, department heads, senior MDs as well. And the communication and the collaboration between these individuals, these bankers, are really important, because for clients, when you go in front of clients, you need to be really extremely coordinated, and your message needs to be same across the firm, because after all, we represent an investment bank, a global investment bank, and our reputation is always on the line. So I think, as Jamie says, like the first class business in the first class way. So that is our motto, and it's important to be coordinated across team members.
Thanks. I love that, Gokhan. I was taking a lot of notes here as you're speaking, and understanding clients' needs and their goals. Looking for roadblocks. There's a lot of those, and being aware of them, anticipating issues, and being open about them. Time is critical there, and obviously team cohesion. So lots of great stuff for the audience today. Thinking about the analysts and the associates, I know they're not really driving the client relationship per se, but they're key, as you mentioned, in the team cohesion bit to the deal being successful. What advice could you give them, or what are you looking for from those analysts and associates in the team to make the deal successful?
So for sure, I think for analysts and associates, it could be challenging at times, but it could be also quite entertaining at times as well, because their learning curve would be much steeper versus senior individuals. So I think for them, I mean, at least for our company, and I'm sure for our competitors as well, they are the backbones of our company. So like associates, VPs, and analysts are the future of our company. So that's why there is really strong focus from our HR, from our senior management. So whenever there are interviews, we actually participate at even like senior levels. And there is a really big focus, even during recessions, hiring is extremely important because so when you hire actually top talent, that would help on the growth of the company. So that is part of our PE multiple, part of our price to book multiple or market cap, because after all, we are also a people business, and that's why it's extremely important. When analyst associates join us, I think our number one objective is to train them so that they are ready and they are well equipped for the challenge of clients, or to give right advice to clients and to add value to clients, which are our effectively revenue generator. Because after all, we work for clients. We are on the sell side as investment bank. And with regards to the projects, so in almost every project, obviously, you have an analyst, you have an associate, and it's important that they work well together. And they have actually quite well-defined job responsibilities. So for analysts, I think we expect them to join like the key calls, to be well organized, to take notes, to listen and to learn and to get guidance from associates and the senior bankers, and to deliver in a timely manner. And attention to detail, so when it comes to review, that is one of the key parts, because when of course you are younger, sometimes like maybe you miss certain details. So it is very important for them to check their work before sending that work to the clients, or internally. It is really important to fix any mistakes, to look at it in a fresh pair of eyes, right? So I think attention to detail is important, and proactivity as well. So we really value proactivity. We really value attention to detail, and because like most of these analysts, they already have a strong background, educational background. They are well motivated. They are smart. But it is easy to make mistakes, and we are working on, as we mentioned, the multi-billion-dollar transactions, and certain mistakes could be actually damaging for the project. So that's why checking the work is really important. So when we send something to clients, there are at least 2-3 iterations or control checkpoints at various levels, to make sure that the client gets the highest quality output, because they use your analysis for their own decision. And if your base is wrong, then it doesn't really make sense. And plus, we also always like try to involve them at young age. So in my career, when I was like 22 years old, my MD at that time, they were taking me to certain CEO meetings. I wasn't talking obviously, but I was analyzing them, and that actually helped me a lot on observing these successful CEOs, CFOs, head of strategy, etc., at a young age, so that you can learn what it takes to get there. I mean, I was terrified myself at the time, like when I see a CEO or when I see a MD. But now you get used to it, and you see that there is nothing to be terrified. There are also human beings, and they really approach younger people with quite like a compassion. So it's actually, I think, a great job, investment banking at young age. I don't think there are many other professions in the world where you can get exposure to such senior decision makers at such a young age.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that exposure, like you said, it's so critical to growth, and maybe a bit scary at first, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll become. And, you know, again, burning up the pad here today with notes for the audience, taking calls, taking notes, delivering on time, being organized, detail orientation, really key, especially for those big deals, and being proactive. So lots of good tips there, I think, for the listeners. If you thought about the challenges, what are the main challenges that you see facing analysts and associates today?
So I think in terms of challenges, I think the first 2 years, the learning curve is extremely steep. So especially like for first year, you just like learn so much. You have like all the types of different different like projects, and I think it never really gets boring. But then on the second year onwards, it becomes actually a bit more challenging because the expectations increase. The demands would be higher from you, because in the first year you have a learning curve. You do the first model, you might have mistakes, or you make sort of presentations, Excel models, etc. You get guidance, and in second year again you repeat these. But once you do something like, let's say, second time, third time, fourth time, you are expected to deliver it in quite accurately. So I think it's really important to keep that learning curve quite steep as well, and to focus on attention to detail. I think diversifying experience is extremely important. So what I would say is, I think and now obviously we have staffers, we have managers who interact with analysts quite intensely. There is really strong access, like the approach. Most of the MDs are really approachable at the firm. So for analysts, I think they really need to diversify their experience. So in what way? Such as, let's say they worked on a buy-side project, on a mergers and acquisitions, M&A deal, right? So that's a great experience. And then on the next deal, they work on a sell-side project, and the next deal they work on an IPO. So this is actually quite helpful compared to working on a sell side 4 times over the 2 years. Sometimes, yes, you don't really have a choice. It's just the team, the demands. But if you have opportunity to diversify your experience across products such as like IPO, a bond deal, a leverage buyout, a spin-off, that really helps your career, because you learn. Because most of the deals, once you do one specific type of project, every deal is different, but there are certain similarities as well. And with regards to geographies too, so it doesn't help to be like one-sided, right? It doesn't help to have only certain type of experience. It helps to talk to people from different geographies, to work on different projects, and also rotations as well, which are generally encouraged across the globe. We are a global firm. There are certain rotations between the teams, between the regions, and we have also certain like internal gatherings. And when you join those type of sessions, they actually enlighten you. You can widen your understanding of investment banking. So I think I wouldn't advise any analyst to just focus on their job and not interested in other types of business. So you really need to be on the lookout for any opportunities, any staffing opportunities, so that you can actually diversify your experience, and it makes you a better banker.
Perfect. Great advice there, I think. And yeah, dipping your toe into more things, learning more skills that are going to help you be more well-rounded. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about mentorship. It seems to me it's very varied from leader to leader and bank to bank. Talk to me a little bit about mentorship at JP Morgan, and also, let's just start there.
Sure. So mentorship has been actually one of the key parts of investment banking as well. When I first joined JP Morgan, I was interviewed by a very senior MD at the time, and he told me that, look, when he started this job, it was tough for him, but he moved up the ladder, and he said that, look, this is some of my friends, when I started, they are not here. They changed their career, or they just couldn't cope up with pressure. So this is like sort of survival of the fittest. But there is also the team environment as well. He said that he's still in touch with analysts that he got to know 25 years ago at the time. So I think these type of elements are quite important. And investment banking, you have certain turnover rate as well. People can change their locations. They can move into different jobs. But it's really important to stay in contact, because some of your colleagues, they could actually move into other corporates. They can become CEOs, CFOs of large companies, and they actually become your clients. And with regards to mentorship, I think for us, of course, I think Jamie has a special place amongst almost all obviously all JP Morgan employees. He is really a great speaker as well. So we were with him 2 days ago, and he's always authentic. He tells you what he thinks. He never tells clients what clients need to think. He gives his opinion, right or wrong, doesn't matter. He has opinion, and he reads a lot. So I think he has been a great mentor as well. So we had lots of exposure, almost all employees, to him, and he loves history. He loves reading, and you cannot imagine like how much he reads every day. Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Economist, and when he talks, he can talk about almost everything. And I think that really gives encouragement, at least for the MDs and other bankers within the system, because you can learn and you get inspired by such a leader. And I don't think like our competitors have a similar figure. So that's really helping us. And I think other mentor I could mention is again within Europe. There are quite a few senior MDs who always approach you. They take interest in what you are doing. They invite you for coffee, for lunch, and they give you advice as you move up to your career. Because as a VP or as a ED or as a MD, your aspirations are and your challenges are always different. And I think the key advice I always get is to focus on the clients, because clients are really critical for us, and we need to be not only a business partner for a client, but we also build certain friendship, because it's important to get trust. After all, the difference you make across your competitors is not only your technical analysis, your advice, but it's also your reliability, your trust, because they share their secrets with you, and in order to share their secrets, they need to trust you. They should ensure that you don't get their information and talk to another client. So I think this trustworthiness is the number one advice we receive from our mentors. And within JP Morgan, I think the training program has been quite strong. We have actually an analyst training, and that was actually one of the best times I had at JP Morgan. When I first joined, they sent us to New York for the analyst training, and we had almost a 2 months training program at the time with New York University professor Damodaran. He taught us about like the cost of equity. We had like certain professors or the lecturers, economists. We learned everything from inside out. And given that it was at the heart of Wall Street, it's where you see from movies. That was really a great experience for me as an industrial engineer, as a person who is coming from Turkey, from an emerging market. That really helped me. And I hear this strong feedback from other analysts as well. And when you get to associate or VP or MD, we still repeat these training programs across the titles.
Oh, you still have them at VP level?
Even MD level, and like you can get sort of courses on like how to communicate or how to negotiate with the other party, or you learn more on like deeper skills when you get to the upper part of the ladder.
So obviously that mentorship is important, and you felt that in terms of your progression and success within the industry in your career. Maybe for those more junior in the industry,
sure,
understanding how to seek out a mentor or find a good mentor, or how to even go about that. Any advice or recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So I think one recommendation is they shouldn't be shy, because that's the number one thing. Most of the analysts, when they first come, they are just say, okay, look, I'm at, unfortunately, bottom of the food chain. I don't want to disturb people. I don't want to annoy people. No, I think there is no such thing. So I think, and that's another thing about the working from office. So once you are in the office, so let's say as an MD, I'm in my office now. My door is closed because of this podcast, but after the podcast, my door is always open, or like they see you. We have the windows, and if they see that you are busy, then yes, fine, they just go away. But if they see that you have a bit of time, or like you are walking around, etc. That makes you really approachable, and they tell you, look, can I speak on something for 2 minutes? They ask for advice, or they mention some of their like experience on a project. So we are really approachable, and this is really key, I think, for analysts to benefit. But while if you work from home, the issue is then they need to call you or they need to email you, and sometimes it might be difficult. So when they see that you have actually free time, that makes you more approachable. So that's why we believe in synergies, and especially on the senior side. There was an announcement recently as well. So we try to be in the office 5 times a week, unless we are traveling or unless we are meeting clients, because it really helps on the junior analysts. Because some of our analysts who were recruited during the pandemic, they had actually certain like unfortunate experience, because they got hired, but they didn't see almost anyone for months, for quarters, right? So that actually limits the learning opportunity, because they don't see other seniors in action. So I think those synergies, in-office synergies, are really important. And we also organize lots of offsites, or when we go abroad for client meetings, we take juniors. So these are like really important for us, the analysts and associates.
Thanks for sharing. And I think, yeah, it's right. Sometimes when you get into the job early, it's difficult to feel like you can ask questions or approach others, but it's glad that you have that open door policy. And I think it's key for growth. I want to touch a bit on networking. A lot of the leaders I've spoken to recently have put a lot of importance on networking and building a network early in your career. Any thoughts on that?
So I think that's exactly extremely important. Again, we have certain analysts, they come from, as I am, like engineering background, maths background, etc. We see them, they could be a bit more introverted, while we have also certain analysts, they are more social. And when we assess their CVs, the experience with like extracurricular activities, running, like working on certain clubs at the universities, these are all quite helpful. And we try to encourage them to be as social as possible. And obviously, everybody is different. There is no one size fits all approach on investment banking. Everybody has their own skills. Everybody has their own comfort zone. But I think it's really important sometimes to get out of your comfort zone. This networking, I know some people like really find it boring, but you can do it in a genuine way as well. There are lots of gatherings. There are lots of conferences we have, and we give them the opportunity. And you can also do, you can also build your network with the clients as well, even in your social environment. You go to a birthday party, you go to a wedding, and then you can actually meet people. And especially at younger age, we encourage it even further, because let's say you are an analyst or you're an associate, you meet sort of the number 4 guy in a company, in certain corporates, right? And they are maybe an analyst in the strategy department. They are 24 years old, 27 years old, etc. But as you go along your career, they will also go along on their career. So in 10 years, that young recruit on company X might be the CFO, might be the CEO. And if you build relationship from such young age, and if that person becomes CEO, that client is yours. So there is no way you can lose that client, because they know you from 10 years, 15 years ago. When somebody is CEO, everybody would call him. Everybody would try to interact with him. But if you know them from when they were like relatively junior at their part, they actually trust you, because you invested in them, even though they did not have a very critical role on their organization, and they will respect that. It's sort of friendship. It's never nice, and also in business, it's never nice to call a client when you need something from them. You also need to call them when you don't need anything, just to check how they are, just to build in the business. Because in investment banks, we work on success fee, ratchets, etc. But sometimes we work a lot, and we don't get remunerated on this. But we are playing the long game. So of course, at some point, there will be opportunities for us. And I think for us, it's most important thing is to gain the trust of the client. And as analysts and associates, if they build relationships from early age, then in 10 years, 15 years, there could be actually very interesting results. Depending on their friends, they could actually get to very senior positions, and they would have a competitive advantage. They would have an edge with that person on with regards to this. So I think this is extremely important.
I love that insight, and it really relates as well. I think that long-term relationship, the authenticity, the trust you talked about, giving people time as you're growing, can lead to big success. I felt that in my career, being in the deal toy space for coming up to 13 years. When I joined back in 2010, there were analysts that are now MDs, so I can see that synergy. So
Yes,
that's great.
exactly.
And any tips for the audience on being more effective in networking? Should they be using LinkedIn? You touched on conferences. Any tips around that for those maybe wanting to learn how to start that
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I mean, on networking, number one is the presence. So first of all, they need to be there. So whatever the conference, whatever, let's say there are team drinks, you don't really want to go, you want to, I don't know, watch your Netflix, etc. But to be honest, I mean, you can watch your Netflix like video anytime, like when you go home or over the weekend. So these drinks or these events, they don't take place every day. They take place, let's say, every 2 weeks, every month, every 2 months, etc. So that's an opportunity. First of all, be there. And number two, then you can observe. You can go with some of your friends so that you feel safer. You can be in a group of environment. It's not like you go alone and then you are just there. You feel weird, etc. And you can find actually angles. Sometimes, like we've talked to clients, and we always talk about business, right? And it could get boring at certain point. But with the client, you could also understand their hobbies. Maybe you don't have common hobbies, but maybe you do. So when you talk about, let's say, sports, like you mentioned Arsenal, I have a client who is a big Arsenal fan. He was very worried about the Manchester City competition, etc. So when you talk about these things, you really click, and it takes you. Actually, you have a bond with them, and then you can also talk about business. It's not only chit chat, but you can use it as a hook. You can talk about like their family. Most of them they have like children. Some of them are actually art investors. Some of them they love their wine. Some of them like they really like traveling. Yeah. And we are an international firm, so I'm Turkish myself. So most of my clients obviously they go to Turkey. We have elections on Sunday. So like there are lots of interesting topics, and they love to get your insights. So for they tell you, look, I'm planning my summer holidays. What do you advise? I'm thinking about Turkey. Like you could find many different angles from your personal life, and also you can listen to their conversation, and you can show interest. If they wrote a book or if they gave a speech, you can be prepared. So let's say if you have a target audience before a networking event, you can just do some research about that person, that CEO, and you can approach him. Look, you say that, look, I love that paragraph in your book, or I love your views about XYZ on the recent podcast, or on the recent speech that you gave, and you can find an angle, and you would be surprised. People would be actually extremely even some people who look like robots outside, they would be actually quite genuine, and like they could be quite approachable when you talk to them. So I think breaking that ice and just getting out of your comfort zone, being confident is extremely important. And confidence is really key on investment banking, because after all, we are selling image, and you see that like Jamie Dimon is extremely confident. And when you are younger, of course, you have certain, maybe you are anxious, you are nervous, but as you practice, then it really gives you confidence. I mean, unfortunately, of course, Kobe Bryant is one of my favorite basketball players, Michael Jordan as well. He was saying that Kobe Bryant, like they were asking him, how were you so successful at clutch time, right? So you were hitting those threes or jumpers. And he was saying that, look, I practiced this almost thousands of times during my practices. So given that I practice so much, it gives me confidence. So for you, as I mean, for certain people, if it is not natural networking or like talking to you, can just maybe practice with your friends. So I think practice really makes it perfect. So when we go to a big pitch, as an investment bank, let's say a beauty parade, etc., we practice so many times internally. And the pitch, when you practice so many times, when you rehearse, it's actually much more successful for the ones where you improvise. And clients really see it. I think practice never goes wrong, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think unless you practice, you don't get the confidence, and the confidence is so key, especially when you want to portray what the work that you're doing for your clients. And again, couldn't agree more with that personal touch, building that personal connection, finding the things that touch those you want to build a relationship with. So yeah, again, thanks so much for sharing that. We've talked quite a bit about analysts and associates. VPs are those nearest to moving into the director and the managing director roles. For VPs listening in today who are looking to take that step into the managing director area, what advice would you give to them to be successful?
Yeah. So first of all, for VPs, EDs, I mean, there are different titles across the investment banks. But first of all, congratulations to them, because they already survived the tough years on investment banking. They have been at the firm for more than 6 years, 8 years, etc. So I think that part is behind them, because they worked a lot. They will still work a lot, but of course not as much. And I think for VPs, they already proved themselves with regards to their attention to detail, technical skills, productivity. So now it is more about the clients. So from VP level, we really want to see, I mean, they don't need to be the first call from a CEO. They don't need to be the first call from a CFO, or they don't need to be like they don't need to know all the details of a client strategy, but at least they need to show that they can build rapport with key clients, and they have future potential to become client-facing bankers. Because after all, it's a client business. So I think it's really important for them to participate in client meetings, to get insights from clients, and to inform internally, or to come up with ideas as well. So if you only focus on your work, your project, you are a good execution banker, but you also need to originate as well. And how do you originate? You originate, one, with relationship, and two, with ideas. So if you present these ideas, and if you come up with these ideas, so never, you can always punch above your weight. So even as a VP, it doesn't hurt to act as an MD. Of course, I mean, you can coordinate with your MD, you can get guidance, but you can think like an MD, and that also shows other people that this guy, this person could actually become an MD as well in future, because you need to give that potential. We always review the top talent, and there is always an idea of who really has a great potential to become an MD. So I think getting close to clients, building your network, and creating, like, coming up with interesting ideas to pitch to clients, and also to provide like really the best service is really important. It is actually quite fascinating, I think, VP, because you are not really an analyst and associate, you are not MD, you are just in the middle, and you need to coordinate on the analysis. It's not an easy job. But the ones who are successful, they would have a really great potential in their careers. And people come and go in this business as well. So you never know. I think platform is really important in my career. So of course, given that I'm Turkish, I always cover Turkey. But my boss at the time, he also introduced me to Middle Eastern clients. And given that there is certain proximity culturally, it's not different. I actually picked up the Middle Eastern client from VP level. And then also on the credit management services, once again, my boss called me, they needed some safe pair of hands, or to cover certain European clients on credit management services, that purchasing, that servicing. I actually took this opportunity because I was always focusing on emerging markets. I wanted to expand my experience on the European clients as well, and on a niche sector where you have like high leverage, where you have high yield bonds. And I took that opportunity. So for VP, and I was a VP at the time, and it helped me on my career future with regards to more diversified experience. And I also hedged myself, because on emerging markets you might not also have like always strong business opportunities, because it's after all it's emerging by definition, and it's not as developed as US or Europe. So you could also like hedge yourself, and I think platform is extremely important. But in order to get this platform, you need to show your potential as well, and maybe your workload will increase, but it will pay off. So after all, like everything in life, there is risk and reward. So you need to just assess the risk and focus on the reward. And at the end, I think the system is rather fair.
Love it. And again, I think for those VPs, as you said, getting closer to the clients, I'm a big believer in playing the role before you assume it, before you attain it, so to speak. So again, that speaks to me.
Yes.
And again, I think I've heard from other leaders, we know that the investment banking industry has fluctuations, so diversifying, having other options, I think makes sense as well. Is there something that's particularly helped you grow and develop as a leader? Training, a podcast, books? Is there something that really has helped you develop your skills?
I think the most important part is observation, because the thing is you are exposed to such high profile leaders across the world. So you can see certain chairmen, certain clients who really resonate well with you, like you are really impressed by them, and you observe them in a meeting. What do they say? How do they say it? Also internally as well, within the bank, you have certain senior leaders you can really look up to, and you need to observe them really well. And once you observe, of course, you are yourself, so you cannot imitate anyone, but at least you learn. So you have your strengths. Your strengths are, I think, done. And then with regards to your weaknesses, you can try to improve it, you observe. And I think reading is really important. So as Jamie Dimon, he reads a lot, like I try to read a lot as well. So I have, you can have subscriptions to all these leading news portals. You can read research reports or books, because the world is changing. The investment banking is also not the same compared to 15 years ago. Now we have these video conferences, we have these podcasts, we have AI. So you can actually learn lots of new things. And you also talk to many different people. So even like I join certain interviews with younger generation, and sometimes actually I learn from them. The more you learn, you know that like the less you know. So there is no limit to that. So I think that really helps. And I think the humility is really important, because we have seen in the world, across the business world, you see that sometimes people rise quite fast. But if they are not humble, if they don't show humility, the decline can also be quite fast as well. So you really need to look into it. I think consensus leadership is also like important. Like you need to talk to other people. You always need to check in with your team, because it's also a human business. You don't know what other people are going through. They might have certain personal issues. So you really need to, I think, give them presence. And I think taking vacation once in a while is also important to refresh your mind. I think in investment banking, unfortunately, it's quite a heavy workload, but it improved a lot. I think over the last 15 years, work-life balance has clearly improved. During pandemic, it was quite tough, because there was a lot of like business activity. So now you see the markets, I think the activity actually slowed down, but it will pick up again. It's inevitable. And I think another advice for the VPs especially is they need to also have a view on the macro outlook as well. So that's extremely important, and also on the geographical side, because that would affect their career. So the world GDP growth was around 3.4% last year. It's declining this year around 2.8%. And on advanced economies, it's almost like 1.3%. So there is still growth. But on the other side, there are struggling economies too. So they need to see the risks and where there could be business opportunities. So debt to GDP levels in Italy is like very high, for example, almost 150%. In Europe, again, very high level of debt. The demographics are not really favorable. So like you need to really consider this. Okay, what does this mean for future sectors? Like which sectors will be winners? AI is coming. Which sectors will be losers? So you need to position yourself based on, especially when you are 23 years old, the world will change a lot in 10 years, 20 years. So if you start positioning yourself for the winning segments, winning geographies, then that would help you as well. And you also need to analyze the macro environment, the Fed. Like I always listen to, for example, the Fed meetings, because last year in March the interest rates were zero. Now it's 5 to 5.25%, the Fed policy rate. So in 1 year we have seen 5% increase. So it's such unprecedented, like steep rate rise, and that has impact on tech companies, the valuations. That has impact on the economy. So once you actually apply for jobs, you always need to see this type of like the impact of this on valuation, on financials, because after all, it affects you. I think what I see is in most of the young graduates, they just look at it on a very narrow way. Like, but if you look into overall macro environment, you can actually make a difference. Nobody has crystal ball, but you could actually anticipate certain generational change. Like Jeff Bezos, for example, he has this famous video. He saw the opportunity and growth on e-commerce, and he started with books because it was like easier to sell. But then he created Amazon. So I think this type of visionary thinking for 10, 20 years could make a difference.
So really looking at that and then position yourself accordingly in the area that potentially sees the growth. You touched on AI. There's so much still in this episode I think we could unpack, but we're running out of time. So I think I'm going to move a couple of quick questions around culture. So what's the one thing you'd like to see change most in investment banking culture?
So I think in investment banking culture, it changed a lot over the last 15 years, and in a good way as well. So I think there is a lot of focus now with regards to analysts, associates, whether they are happy, whether they are pleased, like the work-life balance. So I think that really changed a lot. I think training activities, as I mentioned, this has been a key focus as well. But there is still room for improvement, I think, everywhere. So I think with regards to training, it is extremely important. We have a very fast-paced business environment, so you don't really have a lot of free time, especially for analysts. But I think we can clearly create time, maybe sometimes like over the weekends, or even like certain idle time, like on the offsites. And there is progress on this front, because when I talk to analysts, I really see appetite for them, like to learn more. And if you give them the opportunity, they would love it. Again, I think with regards to technology, we try to utilize it as much as we can. We invest a lot in technology, and this could also make analysts' lives easier, because sometimes like we go see a client, we need a profile of that company. So if you automate that profile creation, and especially AI, that would be clearly a part. So these are still early times, but with regards to your financial analysis, with regards to your merger impact, accretion, dilution, capital impact, some technical analysis, if you have the raw data right and the coding right, I think you can easily conduct this type of analysis. That doesn't mean that the analyst jobs would be redundant if we have those type of analysis with AI, but still they need to ensure that the analysis is accurate, because after all, again, the codes are written by human beings, and you need to see that it is relevant for the client, because there is also qualitative aspects of our job and quantitative aspects. So I think in the future, the work-life balance will continue to improve, but their relevance, the analysts, associates, or VPs, MDs, like relevance will still be important, because this is actually a quite interesting business on the strategic advice front. So I think we can use technology, we can adopt technology even better in our core business. And the clients would clearly appreciate it. And as we transition from generation to generation, right? So with every generation, I think the current generation will be extremely sensitive on the usage of technology, and they would prefer it. And if they don't use it, of course, you could lose market share.
Definitely. And again, I think the AI is so new and there's still a lot to unpack there, but you echo similar things to what I've heard from other leaders in terms of how it could impact the role for the better. You talked a lot about hiring and being involved in the interview process. We talked about the kind of skills required, but on the analyst and associate side, but when they're coming to interview on the cultural side, what's the characteristics that you're looking for from these youngsters?
So I think, yeah, I think everybody has their own interviewing style, of course, but culturally, we are really looking for young candidates who know like what they want from their job. And we always we have actually quite a bit of tendency to hire from like internships. So we hire interns. If they are successful, they become analysts. We have external hiring as well. So, but I think in terms of culture, it's really important to fit into JP Morgan culture. It's generally a quite like humble environment. Humility is really important from top down. So you don't see like these aggressive people as you see in movies. So I think people really work well. So it's like similar to a sports team, like a well-functioning football team or basketball team, right? So it's a team environment. So we want to work as a team. So I think even though someone is like extremely bright, if you don't feel that they are a good team player, then we could struggle obviously on our decision. And we also look into the potential. So whenever I hire someone, even if they don't know certain details on corporate finance, investment banking, on FIG, if I see that they have the potential to learn and they have appetite, they are eager to learn, then that's actually a quite strong attribute for us to hire them. And I also personally, I also check their hobbies as well. Doesn't matter what it is, but like if they have passion for something, it could be team sports, it could be something else. I think you also want some sort of personality for that person rather than only focusing on investment, only focusing on finance. So you need to have that human feeling, extracurricular activities. We have some technical questions, we have some career related questions. So it's quite standard, but everybody has their own style. But I think preparation is really key. So if you go to an interview and if I ask why investment banking, and if you don't really have a good answer, or if I ask why JP Morgan, and if you don't know what JP Morgan is, you just want to get a job, that doesn't really reflect well on your motivation.
Definitely. Thanks for the advice, and I'm sure the audience will take that on board. I can't believe we're coming to the end of the show. We've gone over. I mean, I feel there's so much more we could have discussed and got into. So I think we'll have to have you back for Series 2, Gokhan, so we can really unpack some other topics. How do those listening today get more of you? How do they best connect with you?
So I think, I mean, I have a LinkedIn account, of course. I think my email is there as well. So I mean, we don't use much of social media, especially I think I'm still from like old generation, but I think LinkedIn, email is a good way to connect. I have coffees with many young students or like from like other industries as well who would like to move into investment banking. And during those coffee chats, I also learn from them. It's not one way, and I would love to share my experiences. So exactly, please feel free to reach out to me via email or by LinkedIn. And thank you for this, Pete. I think it was really enjoyable for me as well. My first podcast, but it's really, I think, an interesting way to communicate with many people. And thank you for your questions. Some of them were tough, but thank you for the insightful discussion.
No, I didn't go too tough on you, but yeah, again, thanks so much. I'm a big believer that successful leaders are readers, and I know you are as well from a lot of today's comments. I will ask you for some extra resources to put in the notes of the show for the team.
Sure.
Other than that, I've really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks so much for your time. I appreciate how busy your schedule is. I know this week's been a big week with a lot of the CEOs and in town. So super excited to listen back actually and listen to the insights you've shared. I'm sure there'll be a lot to take away. So thanks very much, and best of luck for those transactions in Q2 as always.
Thank you, Pete. Stay in touch. Take care.
Thanks for joining me today for the Investment Banking Leaders podcast. Today's episode was brought to you by Altrum, the global leaders in commemorating your most important transactions with a meaningful deal toy. So if you have a successful deal to celebrate, hit me up or the Altrum team at altrum.com to get your design started. I really enjoyed chatting with Gokhan and hearing his many insights on how to succeed in the investment banking industry. I loved his view that successful deals are made through authenticity, trust, understanding the stakeholders' needs and goals, but also by adapting to meet roadblocks and ensuring you have a strong, cohesive team around you. He shared that the keys to success for analysts and associates is to be organised, take notes, be proactive, and have an exceptional attention to detail. He coupled this with listening and observing other successful leaders, both internally and externally, and how this helps you grow at a faster rate. I loved his take that building relationships at your level now fosters success in the future, because as they grow and you grow, the relationships will pay back when everyone reaches more senior positions. There was so much more we could have covered. I think we'll have to have Gokhan back for series 2. I hope you enjoyed the episode and have a ton of takeaways, and join me again for the next discussion with another successful investment banking leader. Until then, you can find us where all great podcasts live. Please follow our podcast page, share with those interested, and until next time, best of luck with your transactions.